session is about the Fire Information Systems Group and the CWFIS. So in terms of the series of sessions, this one is a little more recent history than the previous one, needless to say. In fact, I don't even think of this as history since I was there for some of it. But the Fire Information Systems Group is all about obtaining, analyzing, mapping, and disseminating forest fire data for fire management and fire research. And we do many things: fire danger rating, fire weather forecasting, fire growth modeling, fire occurrence prediction, fire monitoring, smoke forecasting, and we do mapping of all the above. And we have a website, and we have web map services, and yeah, it's a really good group, and there's lots going on. This group and this project was started by Bryan Lee, and after Bryan left, the group was taken over by, I shouldn't say taken over, was ably led by Kelvin Hirsch, and subsequently it was led by Michael Brady. And then after Michael left, then it was and is led by our fearless leader, Bruce McNabb. So that's enough chit chat. So now let's get down to business. So we have, so each of us has either something to show or something to say. It's either a show and tell, or it's a show or it's a tell. And now on the original schedule, we also had Rod Sutterby, who is our IT and database guru, but he was too busy and couldn't make it, and didn't have time to prepare anything. So struggle on without him. And we're going to start with Kerry, and he doesn't need very much introduction. He first started working at Northern Forestry Center as a summer student in 1983, and he retired in 2017. Kerry is a meteorologist, so he studies meteors. And so take it away, Kerry.
Yeah, okay. Well, thanks all. Thank you for coming here. I've got my little presentation here, so we're going to kick into share screen mode if I can figure out how. Let's see. Let's try sharing. Whoops, I hit the right button. Let's go to stop share for a second here. Let's try again. Strike one. This guy. Let's share that one. There we go. Okay. Let's see. I hope everyone's seeing this. Big white screen. There we go. So I just wanted to start off by saying, as Peter gave a great introduction of kind of the Fire Management Systems Group. I guess we're kind of more or less have been responsible for the development of the Canadian Wildland Fire Information System. This is a bit of the, I say that one of the golden boys of the fire of Natural Resources Canada. The managers love to brag about it because it's all shiny and lots of bells and whistles. But well before that happened, you know, we started off with DOS. Way back when I was a summer student, back in the 80s, Bryan Lee foolishly hired me. And he and I got to work together on this stuff. A lot of this stuff was actually started off at Petawawa by Peter Courts and the Three Bernies, but we wanted to have a Western product, one that was more more DOS based, PC based, and so we got kind of hired on doing this. And this kind of reminds me, many of you may recall I had a little joke on my door, kind of talking about the good old days. But when I got hired, we were using PCs. And Bryan's pet project was a program called FWI-PC. This is a program that we ran on his Hyperion computer, and we had all those 5 1/4-inch discs, two drives, not just one, 2 drives. That way you could boot off of one drive and run your program on the other. 360 kilobytes, I think, were on those discs. We developed a program called FWI-PC, which collected all the weather data and calculated all those fire danger rating systems. Actually, it was fairly popular. We had a number of clients, including some Americans, and I jokingly added a feature on it that played "O Canada" on Canada Day. You might remember that. Anyway, from there we moved on to another program called IFMIS, the Intelligent Fire Management Information System. So this was us stepping away from just calculating FWIs and trying to do more of a spatial product. We kind of advanced. Now we were using what was that? A Model 60 PS2 Model 60 IBM. A luggable there that weighed about 30 pounds. That was considered.
I think it was a compact 286.
Okay, well, anyway. That was a luggable, and that was like carrying around a sewing machine, but that was what people called a portable computer back in those days. We'd also advanced from 5 1/4-inch discs. Now we're up to 3.5-inch discs, which is really exciting. The idea of IFMIS was to take all this information and try to come up with some sort of a mapping system. We used the cutting edge software of the day, including stuff like Quick Basic, eBase 3 Plus, Quick C. We also had a program called Arity Prolog, which was an artificial intelligence system, which we never quite got working the way we wanted. But anyway, it was the best of intentions. So the basic idea was to take all this information. It was spatially incorporated. So we started off with the White Court area, and we collected together all the forest inventory in White Court. Mind you, back in those days, to plot that map took about 10 minutes. So we started on a coarser resolution scale, and this was, I think, done at a quarter section scale. Quarter township scale. And it only took 30 seconds to make a map. So we were making advances. It was really quite positive. But the other feature we were trying to do was not just look at the forest types, but we were actually trying to get the weather into the system as well. So we collected weather stations from the surrounding area. Originally, it was they were assigned to weather stations, but I remember when I was hired on, I was kind of like, why are you doing that? Why don't we just do a quick interpolation? And I introduced IDW, inverse distance weighting, the IFMIS system. I didn't even know it was called that. But that allowed us to interpolate weather between weather stations, temperature, RH. We even found out how to interpolate the winds. That was a little bit trickier, but we'll get into that story. Then we kind of started to put 2 and 2 together. We were starting to develop this system at around the same time that the fire behavior prediction system was just coming out. I remember going to Winnipeg, and Kelvin was actually leading one of those sessions, a tech transfer section on FBP. Marty must have been having his light and day in the sun there. And so we were able to kind of say, well, if we got the forest fuel type and we got the weather, well, hey, we could get FBP. And we started calculating things like rate of spread. Then we had this other idea, which was, holy smokes, if we know where all the helicopters are, we can figure out how soon they have to, how much time they have to reach the forest, to reach a particular fire. Then we had this other brilliant idea, which was, well, if we know how fast the fire is burning and what the travel time is for helicopters, can we reach the fire before it reaches a certain size, 2 hectares in size? So we came up with this idea of doing coverage assessments. Then we took it even a step farther, and we decided to introduce some optimization and come up with schemes of, well, maybe we could figure out how to best place to put the the helicopters to fight these forest fires, but that ended up, we went too far. What it ended up doing was the program was putting all the helicopters in the wet zones because it could cover more area that way. So that was a dead end. In the meantime, we were able to expanded our area of influence. We started working with Saskatchewan. We worked with Manitoba. At one time, there was a bad fire season in Alaska. Next thing you know, we were running IFMIS for Alaska. BC showed some interest. Ontario showed some interest too. So we were really expanding our influence around Canada. One other neat feature we had in IFMIS was the idea of if we knew what the fire behavior was going to be like, we could actually have a person enter a lat-long location on a given date at a given time. And we could say, well, maybe there's a fire detected at this location. We type in the size of the fire. Next thing you know, IFMIS would come in and it would interpolate all the weather conditions, figure out the fuel type. It would calculate all the fire behavior and predict where the closest helicopters were and how long it would take to reach the forest fire. Another spin-off product that I developed since we're doing all this fun stuff was a program called GeoPC. As it turned out, we were working with so many different coordinate systems at the time that we had to find a means of translating from one to another. And this, we came up with, we were actually using the Alberta Township legal system. And we had a little program that helped to convert from the legal coordinate system to lat-long. Amazingly, the helicopter companies got wind of this. And I guess it was probably the only program that converted legal to lat-long, and they kept on phoning me up, asking for this program. I'm talking like 10, 20, 30 years later, they're still asking for this code. And I always kind of imagined when I died, I'd be famous as my tombstone would say, the guy who wrote GeoPC, because it seems to be the most famous thing I did. In the meantime, Bryan Lee and I did a trip to Winnipeg, and we met the folks at the CIFC once. We saw the big board with the national system, and I think that was probably the spark that kind of got CWFIS started. We kind of imagined, well, we could probably run CWFIS or IFMIS for all of Canada. Around this time, we were also connecting with the folks at Environment Canada, and specifically at the Canadian Meteorological Center in Montreal, and we kind of tapped into their data and we started getting forecasted weather into the system. So, and so we first started back in 1994, coming up with some national maps based on this system. So this was really the first spark that got CWFIS going. And at this stage, I'm going to pass the torch on to, I think, Richard Carr. Unless anyone has any questions, any comments? No?
We're going to save all the questions till the end, if that's all right.
Oh.
So, yeah, so we're going to move on to Richard. I'll do a 10-second introduction here. Sorry, thank you, Kerry. That was great. Richard started working at Northern Forestry Center in 1994, and he is also a meteorologist. And well, I'll leave it at that. Go ahead, Richard.
All right. Well, thanks for the introduction, Peter. And just, I should see my title slide up here.
Yeah, I see it.
Just trying to get it into full screen mode there. All right, so there's my name and email address, just in case anybody's really interested in that. But with that, I'll skip on and get into the details here. So there's a tiny bit of overlap with Kerry's last slide there. And just my first years at Northern Forestry Center, as Peter mentioned, were in 1994 as a summer position. I'm going to really thank Kerry for hiring me on. At the time, I was working with the RAMS numerical weather prediction model, a mesoscale or middle scale atmospheric model. So we're trying to get that unpacked and running at Northern. And At the time, we were using, well, fairly high-end Unix workstations at the time. And, at the same time that I was working with that, well, Bryan Lee and Rod Sutterby and Phil Blower were working on getting the national maps of fire weather index, etc. up. So Phil was actually trying to get the spatial work done on the prototype for that. And Rod at the time was doing the fire weather index calculations at weather stations that were receiving. So yeah, it was kind of a funny time because I was working on RAMs and I'd hear Bryan and Phil running back and forth and talking to each other and be blah, 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 GIF, blah, 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 GIF. It seems like GIF or GIFs were in every sentence that they said, and I had absolutely no idea how to spell it or even what they were at the time. But soon after that, learned that that was the electronic image format that we're producing the maps in, like you see at the lower right there. You know, after that summer position, I really have to thank Kerry and Bryan for keeping me going there for a few years with contracts and terms. So a lot of that was related to RAMs. In 1995, we'd introduced the Canadian Wildland Fire Information System website to the public. So 1994 was really the development year, and 1995 was the rollout. You know, Rod's not here, but if he was here, he might talk about his early work with the mapping system. We called it SFMS eventually. I think there is probably another name or two before that. SFMS for Spatial Fire Management System. I think that's mentioned maybe a little bit later in our presentations today. You know, we started out on Unix workstations and then moved it to a Windows version for a while, I think, and now we're back to using, I think, mainly Linux workstations with open source code for the GIS. So we've kind of walked away from the proprietary software like Esri, etc. But anyways, I'll kind of end it there. There'll be a bit more information on that, I think, later. So we'll just move on. In 1996, one day I came in and the guys were kind of scratching their heads and I wondered what the heck was going on, and apparently the weather data had stopped flowing in. So kind of took a look at it. The little pink box there is got the just a sample snippet of what the international standard was for years, the SA reports, that's hourly weather reporting. But in 1996, there was a switch to the World Meteorological Organization's newest international format, the METAR report. So when that was changed, all of the Environment Canada bulletin numbers changed as well. So what we had for filters set up on our system didn't work anymore since then. Bulletins didn't exist. The code had changed, so the decoder didn't work anymore on this stuff. So we got absolutely no weather data. So something got pulled into the Canadian Wildland Fire Information System operations. And I quickly did a basic decoder for the new METAR format and found out where all the new bulletins were. So that was kind of my, I guess, introduction to CWFIS, and been with it ever since then. So I guess this is the basic flow. We've got Canada depicted here. At the time when I started, the weather stations would be collected at a central location, beamed up to one of the Anik C-series satellites. And then the users could pick up those observations at their surface station. And that was all blended in with international observations as well. So besides Canadian data, we could get observations from around the world. Just down at the bottom of the blue arrow, just towards the central right-hand side, is just a picture of a little Anik receiving dish at the time, a 3/4 meter dish that was pointed where the Anik C-series satellites would reside. So we used that for a number of years before Environment and Climate Change Canada moved to an online data mart and kind of abandoned the satellite infrastructure because it was getting old and expensive to repair. During that era, Jean Chrétien was our prime minister, and it seemed like wherever he went on a trade mission, he would mention the Canadian Wildland Fire Information System, and nations be interested in that. So he'd come back and get a request to do a project for different world regions. So we had one for Southeast Asia, the Association of Southeast Asian Nations. So it's just to the left of the Canada map, and above that is a sample of a Mexico map. So we had a number of these international projects on the go as well. Now, we decided that Little Anik satellite wasn't quite a big enough dish to put on the roof. So in the early 2000s, we got a bigger dish, but it wasn't really weather data it was collecting. It was the an AVHR receiver for polar orbiting satellites. So we had that installed in 2002. So you can see the dome that encloses it in the center, and some installation pictures on the right, the dish with the dome open at the top, little computer receiving station in the middle, and then a sample of the remote sensing product at the bottom. So we've got the, I guess, 3 band image, so we could create a false color map of the Earth. So the green would be land or forested area, red is heat signatures, so fire areas, and yellow would be smoke, white is clouds. So we operated this for a number of years, but eventually the changes in computer operating systems, it wasn't compatible with the receiving equipment. So we kind of abandoned it temporarily, at least. Then our building started undergoing renovations. The cables got moved, and then we had the COVID pandemic. So, the next task, I guess, sometime in the future is to actually locate the receiving cables for this and then make a decision whether we continue to try to run it or maybe take the thing down. But it did serve us well for a number of years. I think John might talk a little bit more about that a bit later in his presentation. Here's the output products for that. So then one day, we came into work, and one of the colleagues came down the hall and said, "Hey, you're a meteorologist. Why don't you tell us about the weather?" So it's like, yeah, I guess I could do that. Thanks for asking. And so I started doing just in-house weather briefings, usually on Tuesday afternoons, although they were very informal, so the schedule was sporadic and erratic. But during one of those weeks, we had some of the CIFC staff come in, the Canadian Interagency Forest Fire Center, people from Winnipeg, and they saw one of those and said, "Hey, we can use these for national preparedness planning." So it's like, okay, well, there's a new service, I guess, that we're going to provide. So started doing national fire weather briefings to CIFC on Wednesday mornings before their duty officer conference calls. So that grew a little bit more too with the development of the kind of the emergency response, the SPU, or Strategic Planning Unit. And that's the group that involves CIFC, our lead on fire, which is our Director General, Mike Norton at the time, currently I should say, and our International Affairs Officer from Ottawa. So the goal of the SPU is to start preparing for bringing in international resources to fight Canadian fires. So when that kicks in at a strategic planning level unit of 3 or higher, that's on a scale of 5. Then we go to a couple additional briefings per week. And if we do get international crews into the country, well, then we might even go a step higher and do additional briefings as well, since I'll have a liaison officer at the CIFC office. So, what started as a very simple, informal thing, I think turned into a fairly well utilized program that I've probably been doing it for 8 or 10 years now, I guess. Gonna lose track of when we actually started. So basically, there's a lot of stuff that goes into these national weather briefings, and I'm not going to go through all the graphics on here, but you can see right at the top center there is a Canadian Wildland Fire Information System map. So you can certainly use some of the CWFIS products, some of the modeling from different centers around the world. The top left is from the National Center for Environmental Prediction in the USA. Work with Environment Canada a lot, so we've got things like lightning forecasts, precipitation, summaries over the past 24 hours. That's the bottom left panel there, the Canadian precipitation analysis. Look at things like climate indexes as well, satellite photos. There's quite a bit that goes into these, but it all boils down into what you see through the center there at the left, kind of a graphic display of what we might expect over the coming week, and the gray panel with the colored text in it, just kind of a text summary of what we expect indexes, fire weather indexes to be doing in the coming week. Now, besides that, I mean, kind of hinted at working with Environment and Climate Change Canada. So following the First River and Fort McMurray fire in 2016, UCCC expressed an interest in working with the fire community. So we started monthly conversations with their, what was the Analysis and Prognosis Group at CMC in Montreal. That's the Canadian Meteorological Centre, all the modeling work gets done. And so with them, we developed a number of products that we've been slowly kind of bringing out into the fire community. Top center, you can see a temperature and humidity crossover map. So the humidity drops to equal the temperature in Celsius or falls below it. We get what we call a crossover, and indicates a pretty high probability of fire starts given ignitions, presence of ignitions. So a lot of, I think, of the provincial agencies use this type of product to come up with a national version here. And to the right of that hot, dry, windy index map, there's a number of other things too as well. And I think since then our conversation has really grown beyond that too, and we're involved in things like smoke modeling. So we're providing information to CMC to use in their air quality models, for example. So you want to know what forest fires produce. We've had some trilateral projects as well that involve Canada, US, and Mexico. One is the North American Drought Monitor. You can see a sample map at the right where each country submits its drought information. It's collated into a single product. It's actually Agriculture and Agri-Food Canada that does a national drought reporting that we contribute to their product, and they put it into the North American report. And the NASFAO, the North American Seasonal Forecast Assessment Outlook. Let's see, left-hand image there. So all three countries are putting out a monthly outlook as to where they expect fire activity to be, and greater than normal for each month of the fire season. The US and Mexico will probably put that out year-round, but really we don't contribute too much in the way of graphics until we get into maybe March, April, and we'll probably end that sometime in September, October, but contribute text to it throughout the winter, just describing what the weather climate patterns have been like and what we may expect for the coming spring. So, I haven't talked about geographic information system much, or the website. So, that'll come a little bit later in our session today. Some of that maybe you can determine from the next few presentations. And with that, I will maybe turn it back to Peter, who will pass the torch on to John, I believe.
Okay, thank you, Richard. That was great. And yes, so next we will indeed hear from John Little. John has a degree in anthropology and another one in geographic information systems. He joined our group in 2001, and that makes him the new guy because he's only been here for 20 years. Take it away, John.
Okay, great. Can you see my screen there?
I see it. I see it.
Okay, excellent. Okay, thanks everyone. Okay, well, I didn't have a picture of Bryan Lee to include here, but basically, this is the fire management systems team that I joined on April 23rd, 2001. Yeah, it'll be 20 years next month, and as Peter mentioned, up until fairly recently, I've been the new guy. So I was hired as a spatial data analyst working for Peter on a bunch of GIS and mapping projects, learning a lot about spatial analysis, scripting and Avenue, and how to produce basic web pages. So there was a lot to learn about fire and fire data, and it was all very interesting stuff. Still is. Oh, hang on. Why? Okay, can you still see this? Yeah, okay. Oh, okay. I started working on the forest fire conditions report. Peter and I were running like 30 years of daily grids. So producing grid stats, showing normals and percentiles and that kind of thing. So a lot of this work is still being used on the CWFIS today. And although it desperately needs a redo, and thankfully we have new people to start working on that. So also, Peter had me working on the Yukon Fire History Atlas. So we're working closely with the folks up in Yukon. This got us some fame, not much fortune, but some fame. There was even talk of this becoming a coffee table book, but I have not yet seen this on the shelves in chapters. Also, I worked on the Southeast Asia Fire Danger Project. I learned a lot from that team. That was really interesting. I think this is what really funded my position. So thanks, Bryan, for really keeping me on in that. And so being the new guy, I didn't really see much of Bryan Lee in these early years. He was often off jet setting around the world or in Ottawa. But I really came to learn and understand that he was the real visionary and had lots of real interesting ideas to bring to the fire group. And I recall him talking to me about the value and importance of data synthesis products, like bringing in data from all the different data warehouses and put together maps and infographics and that kind of thing. So that's really what I have been involved with a lot over the years. However, little did they know that I was really colorblind, and so that resulted in some interesting maps and infographics and that kind of thing. Turns out that the two GIS people in the group, both Peter and I, are colorblind. And Peter may deny that, but it's true. So around 2002, I started working on the redevelopment of the FMS website. And so this is what the website looked like back then. And in the early years, it was really a wild west in terms of standards and government websites. And there was no common look and feel back then. And so the FMS website was really a portal into a number of different systems project websites. So this is what the CWFIS looked like back then. And so it was a lot of the same information that we have now on the website. Also, as others have mentioned, there's a lot of international work. So the Asian Fire Weather Information System and Mexico, and we actually still run these Mexico maps. So that's kind of interesting. Bryan got us involved in, this international work, which was really fun. Also, this is what the Fire M3 website looked like back then. And I remember Peter, when I was first hired, saying that they wanted to call it Fire 3M, but that name was taken and there was too many copyright infringements on that. So, and then of course, SFMS, Spatial Fire Management Systems. So SFMS has gone through a lot of various versioning over the years, but really it remains the core foundation of what creates the daily maps throughout these years. So again, in 2002, I began working on developing the new CWFIS website. And so a huge thanks to John Ellefson, who really helped me out all these years. And yeah, John is really an extended member of the FMS team, as working to develop and manage the CWFIS. So back then we pulled together a lot of the content that had already existed in some of these other web products. And you know, we pulled together this information, background information, current conditions, FWI, FBP, hotspots, historical normals, that kind of stuff, links to other fire research projects. And we even had a public survey on there for, you know, public to let us know what they thought. And over the years, the website went through various versioning and adapting to various common look and feel government standards and that kind of thing, new products, tools, features. And then around 2004, 2005, we added an interactive mapper, enabling users to customize their views, adding different layers, zooming in, that kind of thing. So this was really considered cutting edge back then. So it was fun to work on. Also around 2003, our team inherited the large fire database, so Stocks et al.'s work. And I began to develop and manage the annual collection of fire point and polygon data. And this became the National Fire Database. And also around this time, the systems group got involved in some carbon accounting and started working with the Fire Mars team, which included CCRS, a bunch of fire researchers, carbon accounters, and Ron Hall's remote sensing group at Northern. And we worked to improve burned area mapping using remote sensing. And so one of the products from that National Burned Area Composite also became integrated in the CWFIS. So, I mean, these are a couple good examples of, you know, information projects that are going on within the larger fire group that become integrated into the information, the CWFIS. So later we started producing the work with U.S. Forest Service, a North America fire danger map, and also here's Kerry's baby, the monthly and seasonal forecasts. So the monthly forecasts ran and still do run the first of every month, and so it was tradition. Every month, Kerry would go storming up and down the halls, asking, "So is the new forecast ready yet?" And then followed by Kerry really pestering Peter and I to adjust the numeric breaking points because we needed more red or we needed less red on the map. But that was fun. So this is what the website looks nowadays and provides current conditions, forecasts, seasonal forecasts, fire locations, reports, access to lots and lots and lots of data. So the CWFIS has evolved into a national online hub of wildland fire information and has had increasing numbers of web traffic over the years. And during the summer months, it is one of the NRCan's most popular websites. And now under Bruce's leadership and following Rod's vision of standards and interoperability, we're expanding into a new realm, working closely with CIFC and partner agencies to develop an information framework that will, you know, improve national, shared, standardized, integrated fire information. But, you know, basically it's all about the good people you work with and the fun times roasting wieners in the fire lab. So that's it for me. I think we're passing it on to Peter now.
Thank you, John. That was great. And yeah, moving right along. We're supposed to talk for 10 minutes each, and some people may have talked for a little bit more than 10 minutes, but I won't name any names. And I might be one of them as well. Okay, so now I need to show you my presentation, and I need to share my screen, and technical details are always the most fun part. Let's see, share screen. Yeah, here we go. Okay. All right. Can you see that? Can you see that picture of the Northern Forestry Center in 1905?
No.
Okay, yeah. So I started working at Northern Forestry Center in 1995, which was at a time when, according to my kids, Edmonton looked like this.
We don't have your screen up yet, Peter.
Oh, okay. Let's see. Let me try that again. Oh, why?
You're clicking the share, like when you choose the
share.
window to share, you have to click another share button. There we go.
Yeah, I didn't click the second share button. Yeah, so back when Edmonton looked like this, I started working at Northern Forestry Center. Let's see. Okay, yeah, and sure enough, it was true because here's documented evidence that back in those days, Richard calculated the FWI with pencil and paper. But thankfully, we had our leader who had this vision for the future and recognized the potential of these things called computers to do this kind of work for us, so that we could spend our lunch breaks in the fire lab roasting hot dogs. My first job when I arrived at Northern Forestry Center was to digitize fire perimeters. And this is a picture of me before I lost my hair. Actually, that's not true. This is a picture of Mike Smith using the digitizer. And we don't have that digitizer anymore because Mike Smith worked his way right out of a job by digitizing all the fire maps until we didn't have any left to do. My second task was to write a program to convert grids from SPAN's format to ArcInfo format. This was back in the days when programs had their own format and never the twain shall meet. And so I wrote that program and I called it Nedrify. It was named after Dennis Nedry, who did the programming for Jurassic Park and was subsequently eaten by a Dilophosaurus. So now this picture was taken in 1996, but this is the people I met when I arrived, essentially. And so we had Bryan Lee, who was leading the charge, and after Bryan left, then Kelvin took over the group. And so here's the first two leaders of the Fire Information Systems group. And here's some more characters I met when I got there. On the left is Rod. Again, he's our IT and database guy. And on the right are Kerry and Richard. And so not that much has changed. I mean, Kerry is gone. But other than that, Rod and Richard are still there. We don't have those big blocky monitors anymore. And if you look in the background through the window behind Rod, you'll see the old greenhouses. Those aren't there anymore either. Now we have new greenhouses. So this is me in 1996. My first office, in quotes, was the computer room. And there were three computers in there, one for the digitizer, one for SPANs, and one for ArcInfo. And because I was in there, they basically were all mine. So I had three computers, and I was happy as a happier than a clam, really. And I may try to make myself at home, for example, by putting my poster of Caerphilly Castle on the wall. And subsequently, I got my own office. Well, I got my own another office, and that was the one right next door, which is the skinny one that Kim is in now. And after that, in the year that Kelvin left, he went to Toronto to do his master's degree. And so then I got his office, which had windows. And his office also had something that all the offices, all the outer offices have, which is this slot in the ceiling. And nobody ever pays attention to that because it doesn't really matter, except in Kelvin's office, because at that time, in Kelvin's office, a blast of freezing cold air would come from that slot. making, and if you sat underneath it, you would surely freeze. And if you were anywhere in the office, you had to wear a parka. So I actually, this was not true of any of the other offices. So I don't know why this one had such hyperactive air conditioning, but I actually blocked it with pieces of baseboard, and that made the office comfortable and a good temperature. Here's a picture of Northern Forestry Center in 1996. And again, looks pretty similar. The trees are a bit taller, except for the one that blew down last month. And also except for the tall chimneys on the roof there, and the ping pong ball is not on the roof yet. However, we do see on the roof the what Bryan Lee so endearingly called the pigeon poop deflector. We have the, that must have been put on that very year because it wasn't there when I first got there, and now in 1996 it is. And we have been protected from pigeon poop by that deflector for many years now. So I'm sure we all appreciate that greatly. I met a number of people, of course, who were not in the information systems group. For example, there was an interesting guy downstairs named Al Irwin, and he wrote a program to optimize the placement of helicopters based on a number of inputs. And so I had to produce the inputs for his program. So I gave him a grid, and it looked like that first row of numbers there. It was space delimited. And he took one look at it and he said, "Well, I can't read that." He said, all the numbers have to occupy the same number of characters. So if you have a 1-character number, it has to have 2 spaces in front of it, as in the second row. So then I had to go write a program so that his program could read in my grid. And I said, "What's going on?" He said, "Well, this is a Fortran program." I said, "Fortran? What is this, the 1850s? He said, "Fortran can do anything." I said, "No, it can't. It can't read my input grid." A couple of years after I got there, Bernie Todd joined the group. He came from Petawawa when it shut down, and he sadly passed away in 2005. It was just around the time when he would have retired. So, but he was a good guy to have around, and he worked on all kinds of stuff: fire occurrence prediction, fire growth modeling, spatial fire management system, and he also worked on the CWFIS website for a while. And we were all very appreciative of the swag we got from the folks from New Zealand when they came to visit. They brought like coasters and lapel pins and stuff and pamphlets, and all their swag featured their fire prevention character. And you see him on the right, and his name was Bernie. We all thought that was hilarious. Bernie himself apparently didn't think so. I'm not sure why. Another great character I met soon after I arrived was Meme. And I remember I was late for work one day. It was the one and only time I was late for work. And because I was late, I was running down the hallway, and all of a sudden I heard a voice calling out, "Hey, no running in the halls. Didn't you learn anything at school?" And that was Meme. I stopped and I stared at her, and I didn't even know what to say. Bryan himself was a great character as well. And for example, I sent him this image, this black and white FWI image, and I even provided a link directly to it for him to cut and paste. But apparently cutting and pasting was too much. So he wrote back saying, "No, you dolt." How many of our fine center's employees have been called a dolt by their supervisor? Anyway, it's good to know that we work in such a professional environment all the time. Well, another character I met was Mike Hobbs. So Mike Hobbs, he took it upon himself to give me what he called pre-marriage counseling. This was in the late 90s when I was having problems apparently with my girlfriend, Michelle. So he thought I needed help, and his help consisted mostly of telling me to stop staring out the window and get back to work. And so I'm not sure if any of the credit should go to Mike Hobbs, but I did indeed end up marrying Michelle, which was good for the group because she makes really good birthday cakes. And when we have a birthday party, or at least when we used to before COVID came along, we always have cake and fire. You have to have fire in the fire group. And so here's an example. And yeah, apparently some people don't know how to cut birthday cake. But other than that, here's another birthday party with cake and a little bit of fire. And so we all appreciate Michelle's birthday cakes. And in the background there behind Brent, you can see that microwave. That's a new microwave. We used to have an old microwave. And that microwave was condemned by Brian Mottis. He had a radiation detector and he went around testing all the microwaves in the building, and he determined that our microwave was leaking radiation. So I helpfully put a sign on it saying, while you're microwaving your food, step away from the microwave, otherwise you'll get irradiated. But apparently that warning sign wasn't quite good enough for the Health and Safety Committee. They took the microwave oven away completely, along with the sign. And then there were, yeah, so here's the hot dog roasts in the fire lab. Now the fire lab is right across from my office, so I could never miss out on one of these. And second from the left, you see our new guy, John. He arrived in 2001. Here we have one of our fire lab Christmas parties. Every year we had the Christmas party, and that's when we'd have 30 or 40 people cramming into the fire lab, and they spilled out into the hallway and they were loud and noisy, so I couldn't get any work done. So I had to either join the party or go Christmas shopping. So I did some of each. After we started our website, we found out that we also had to have it in French. So we ran all the English text through an automatic translation program. And we took the French from the translation program and put it on the French version of the website, and we were back in business. And about a month later, somebody who could actually speak French, unlike us, actually looked at the French version of our website and said, "Hey, what's going on?" And one of the mistakes on there, for example, was the fact that the translation program translated the bark of the tree as the bark of a dog. And so this was not acceptable, and we had to get someone who could actually speak French to write the French for our website. But one of the happy and lasting results of that exercise was that Kerry decided to start using some French phrases, and one of them was "frapper la rue." So when he used to go out for lunch, which he did at 11:45 every Friday, he used to say, "Let's hit the road," because he wanted to beat the lunch rush. But then after that, he would say, "Let's frapper la rue," just to show how bilingual we are in the CW, in the Fire Information Systems group. And for the Southeast Asia project, yeah, I better make sure I don't go over 10 minutes here. For the Southeast Asia project, my task was to make a page introducing all the members of the group. And I had to write down their name and the position, and I had put in a picture of them. And I didn't have any pictures, so I just grabbed some handy pictures that I found and put those on there. And so these were the pictures I picked. And now you probably can't guess who objected most strenuously to this. Was it, for example, Bryan Lee, who was in charge of making sure our group was very professional, as previously mentioned? Or perhaps it was Rod, who got stuck with being grumpy Eeyore? Well, actually, neither of these folks objected at all. It was Bernie that demanded I remove the Winnie the Pooh pictures. And so I did. It was a sad moment. And I always had a great relationship with upper management. And I remember the day I met Boyd Case. I was leaving work for the day, and I and I met him in the hall, and he looked vaguely familiar. I'm not sure why. And so I said to him, I said, I didn't, he was talking to somebody else, so I didn't want to be too obtrusive, but I said, hey, I said, have I met you before? And he said, I don't think so. And so I said, oh, sorry, I thought you looked familiar. Well, never mind, I gotta go, and off I went. So I didn't introduce myself. I didn't find out that he was Boyd Case until later. But here's a picture of me getting along famously with Tim Sheldon. And so I recovered from the Boyd Case incident. And now here's a good quiz for y'all. What do these 4 pictures have in common? Here we got Hal, the computer from A Space Odyssey, and we got the god Neptune, and we have composer Vivaldi, and the bottom there we have Dagon from Stargate. And what do these all have in common? Well, these are our server names. When I arrived at Northern, all the servers were named after characters from Greek and Roman mythology. And after we ran out of those names, then I suggested to Kelly Petco that we use classical composers. And so that's what we did for a while. And we had Bach and Mozart and Vivaldi, and we still have some of those. But after a number of years, Terry Ardema decided that we were going to use something different. We were going to use names of people and places from Stargate. So we started getting all these strange, unpronounceable looking words like Janai and Dagon, and I don't even know what else. But Hal was our very own computer. Hal was our server that we had upstairs on the 3rd floor with us. And that was between the gods and goddesses and the composers. And Hal had his very own his own room. Hal had his own room. We called it the fridge because it had its own air conditioning unit in there, and that air conditioning unit kept the temperature pretty low, and so we called it the fridge. And the fridge is still there to this day. Hal is long gone, and the air conditioner hasn't been turned on for years either, but the fridge is still there. This is you've seen a bunch of these already. This is an example of the kind of map that is produced by the Spatial Fire Management System, or SFMS for short. And I remember when I was introducing SFMS to the CIFC Science and Technology Working Group in Prince Albert one year, and so my opening slide was this, and I asked those guys to guess which of these phrases was the right one for what SFMS stands for. And they all stared at me in shocked silence, except for Cordy Teamstra, who said, he said something like, "Oh, Peter, you shouldn't have done that." It did transpire, though, that everyone's favorite was that last one, the sludge flow measuring system. We, as mentioned previously, we set up SFMS in Mexico as well. Before we did that, we had to make sure that the Canadian fire danger rating system would work in Mexican conditions. And so here's a comparison between the drought codes in Edmonton and in Guadalajara. So we had drought codes, the likes of which Canada had never seen before. And we were worried that it might go to infinity and beyond. But it didn't. Every winter it came back down, back to reasonable reality, and then every summer or whenever that was, it would go back up to ridiculous. So we were pretty happy that the FWI system could work down there. Fire M3. This is what Fire M3 looks like on the interactive map. I show this one because it's so much more interesting to look at than the original maps, which would just show the whole country at once and in a very, very large scale. And well, when we started doing night detection, I shouldn't say we, Fire M3 was started by, actually started by CCRS, Canada Centre for Remote Sensing. And I remember getting a call from Rob Fraser at CCRS, and that was on the morning of May 24, 2001. And he said, "What's going on in Alberta?" He said, "I got a big clump of hotspots that popped up in the middle of the night." And so I looked at it and I said, "Well, that can't be right. So there must be something wrong with your night detection algorithm." because I don't know anything about any fire in Alberta, and plus fires die down at night. Everybody knows that fires don't burn at night. So that was my moment of fame, my moment to achieve fame, and failing to do so. That turned out to be the Chisholm fire, which burned through the town of Chisholm and ended up burning over 100,000 hectares. And so at the moment when I could have said, yes, it's working and you're amazing, I said, you must have made a mistake. In those early years, some of the hotspots were indeed false positives, and we had what we called zingers. And John Little and I spent quite a bit of time manually removing zingers from the hotspot database. And what is a zinger, you may ask? Well, we used to joke that these were the landing strips for alien spacecraft, and they had to have long landing strips because they came in at such a high speed. So now, with this slide, I take you to an area of the Northern Forestry Center that most people rarely visit, and that is the penthouse, that mysterious fourth floor, which is absolutely crammed full of pipes, big and small, of all different colors, running hither and thither. And I show you this picture because there's a very tempting string dangling down there with a pink ribbon on it. And if you walk past there, as we had to do when Richard was building the ping pong ball on the roof, you might be tempted to pull on that string, but somehow we all managed to walk by without pulling on that string, except for one person who will remain nameless and who got all wet as a result. One of the side or byproducts, or ongoing projects of Fire M3 was the carbon emissions team trying to estimate how much carbon was being released from forest fires. And so for that, we teamed up with the carbon accounting team. And so we were the carbon emission team, and the two of us together were the KitKat team, or KitKat was the colloquialism. And the KitKat project was pretty successful, and apparently after it became successful enough to attract the attention of management, let's say, well, we couldn't call it the KitKat project anymore. So they decided to call it the Canadian Wildland Fire Information Systems, for reasons that escape me to this day. And after a while, after like a year or two of calling it the CWFIS, someone smart said, well, how come this project is called the same thing as that project over there? Well, a good point. So then they decided on a new name. They decided to call it the Fire Monitoring, Accounting, and Reporting System. And this was good because I had to give a presentation on this one point, and I pointed out that when the weather is cold, more people buy chocolate bars than when the weather is hot. And Nestle was aware of this fact, and so they were very interested in not having the weather warm up. They wanted to keep things cool so they could sell more chocolate bars. And so reducing carbon emissions would keep the planet cooler and sell more chocolate bars. So this is our current supervisor and leader of our team. And I remember the day when he arrived, and we had not met him before. We just knew that we were getting a new boss. And so I thought, I better make sure I'm on time for work. And so I showed up at 8 o'clock sharp, and I wore a nice shirt so I could make a good impression. And when I got there, lo and behold, Kerry was there too. And he rarely arrived that early. And lo and behold, he also was wearing a nice shirt. And so we were both ready for our new boss to arrive, and had no idea what he was like. And after we met Bruce, who was just as easygoing and just as much fun as our previous supervisors, we realized how unnecessary our trepidation was. And Bruce is definitely cast in the mold of Bryan Lee in terms of being really, I don't know what the right word is, collegial kind of guy. Lots of, just great to have around, lots of fun to be with, and always got something really interesting to say from his massive encyclopedic trove of knowledge that he carries around in his head all the time. And I also have to mention that he rides his bike to work all year round, even in the dead of winter. And the year after he arrived, he organized a barbecue at Islet Lake, and we went there, and we had, of course, we had the barbecue, and we had a scavenger hunt. We were divided up into teams, and my team was called the Fire Information Systems Hotshots, or FISH for short, and we had our own logo, which was the Smart Fish logo, which, as you can see there toward the bottom of the screen, and we had our own manual, the Fish Smart manual, and our team won the scavenger contest that year. Now I take you, now I'm going over time, I know, but nevertheless, I take you now to the secret hidden heart of the fire group, not just the systems group, but the whole fire group, and that's the coffee fund. And the coffee fund is great because if you want a coffee, you just go and get coffee, and you just put a little mark, 1 mark for each cup of coffee you take, and then you pay later. And Kerry was the treasurer for quite a number of years. And one of the ongoing questions was who drinks the most coffee. And if you look at the one on the, if you look at the sheet on the left, which is handily dated July 15th, 2002, and if you look at those numbers in brackets are the number of coffees owing from the previous sheet. And so Marty owed 40 cups, and it was 20 cents a cup, so he owed $8. And Kerry, his numbers crossed out, which may or may not indicate that he actually paid, but he owed 134 cups from the previous sheet. So that's quite a lot of cups of coffee. And there you can see that we had quite a number of diehard coffee drinkers in the group. And here's 2 more. Now you can see the price keeps going up. The one on the left, which looks like it should be analyzed by an archaeologist, the price is 25 cents a cup. And by the one on the right, which is quite a recent one, it's 33 1/3 cents per cup. And John Little is the treasurer now, and he has a system for accepting cents and thirds thereof, if necessary. And those numbers, those circled numbers on the left, are the total number of cups of coffee owed by each person. And so Kerry owes 158, and Quinn owes 60, and Richard owes 43, and so on. And you'll notice that Kerry's 158 is 3 times more than anyone else's. So if someone had to win the competition for most coffee drunk, that would have to be Kerry. And he owed John more than $50, and he still hasn't paid. Well, I know we all like to pick on Kerry, and sorry, Kerry, but I have to tell one story about Kerry, and that's the fact that when people came up to the 3rd floor, like visitors, he would ask them if they had a 3rd floor pass. And so here came one. Of course, most people knew he was joking, and they just laughed at him. But then there was a young lady who came up, and she thought he was serious. And she said, "No, I'm sorry, I don't have a 3rd floor pass." And he said, "Well, if you don't have a 3rd floor pass, then you're not allowed to be on the 3rd floor, except on the first Monday of every month when we give a free tour." And so she said, "Oh, shoot." She said, I guess I better come back on the first Monday of the month." He said, "Yeah, that would be great." And she left, and she went back downstairs. I said, "Kerry, you didn't help her find who she was looking for. You didn't ask her what she was doing. And now she's gone, and she'll probably never come back." And I said, "What if she comes back on the first Monday of the month, expecting there to be a tour?" And he said, "Well, then we'll give her a tour." Anyway, one of Kerry's pet peeves is people who spell lightning with an E. And so this is the 3rd floor pass that I gave Kerry on the day he retired. And I made sure to spell lightning with an E. And I put the Kit Kat logo on there as well. So some things, so a lot of things have changed at Northern Forestry Center since I arrived. And so, for example, Kerry is gone, but some things stay the same. And one of the things that has stayed the same is this poster, which was made by Marty Alexander and Rick Lanaville back in 1987. And after they made it, they put it on hung it on the wall in the fire hall, and it's still there to this day, which just goes to show the enduring quality of the fire research that goes on at Northern Forestry Center. This is a picture of the view outside my office window, or at least it used to be when I was in the office. And I show you this because I'm very privileged and pretty spoiled to work at Northern Forestry Center, to have a beautiful office with a nice view, and most importantly, to work with a really great bunch of colleagues. And here are a bunch of them. These are the past and present members of the Fire Information Systems Group. And I probably missed somebody, so that's why I'm not going to show it to you for very long, because if you look at it for a long time, you'll figure out who's missing. So thanks very much. And now I should be back to reality. And I would like to now introduce again our next speaker, and that is Bryan Lee. He is the founder of the group and of the CWFIS. He started working at Northern Forestry Center in 1984 and retired in 2003. He won a whole bunch of awards, including 3 Departmental Merit Awards, 1 for IFMIS, 1 for Fire and 3, and 1 for being an all-around smart guy. And he joins us from his home on Vancouver Island, and we're not jealous.
Well, thank you, Peter. I guess I made a mistake saying I talk last. It's pretty hard to follow you after that presentation, but I'm not going to be anywhere near as much fun as that. What you just did. You did a good job. Well, I made some notes here because, you know, with COVID, I didn't have access to any of the historical data or any of the information that I had. It's all back in Edmonton. And I really wasn't sure what I could talk about. I wrote some notes down here, and I think I give you a little bit of a history about me. I started out in my federal career in 1974 as a park warden in Jasper National Park. Pretty much a dream job for a lot of people. And then I guess I moved on to regional forester for Parks Canada and for Prairie and Northern Region, and got to travel and see all the national parks pretty much all over the prairies and much of Canada. And I guess another dream job as well for a lot of people. But Dennis Dubé and Marty Alexander as well, they kept coming up and asking me to apply on jobs. And I did apply on a job at the Northern Forestry Center in 1983 and won that competition, and then said, no, I got the dream job right now back with Parks Canada, and I didn't take it. But sure enough, in 1984, they ran that competition again. I guess nobody had taken the job. And I said, well, maybe it's time. And I'd like to get closer to the mountains and closer to the West Coast where my home was. So I started in 1984, and that was 37 years ago. I find that really hard to believe. You know, it was quite amazing because as Peter said, I retired in 2003. So I did work for 6 months in 2005 on contract to do the Malaysian project after I'd retired. So I basically worked for 20 years at Northern Forestry Center, and here it is 17 years later. So I've almost been retired as long as I've worked at the center. And you know, your mind, when you get a little bit older, you get forgetful. I don't know if any of you retirees have that problem. I don't think so. I didn't think you would. You're all pretty smart guys. But you do forget things. And, you know, the only thing I had to, all my slides were lost by Apple and their iCloud back in, I think, about 10 years ago. So I don't even have very many pictures from the old days. So I can't even reminisce by looking at the photos. So it was fun to look at the slides and pictures of people here in the previous presentations. I guess when I did start there, I was a one-man band, and I'll tell you some funny stories. I arrived and I think in June of '84, and so I said, okay, I went into Dennis Dubé's office and said, okay, what do you want me to start working on? And he says, oh, Bryan, that's not the way we do it here at CFS. You tell us what you're going to work on. And I said, oh, interesting. You know, this could be a lot of fun. And it took me a few years to kind of sort my life out and try to figure out what I could do, how I could contribute to the program. And the one thing was before I worked with Parks Canada, I had worked with the the BC Department of Mines doing geological mapping and geomorphology. And of course, I was a mountain climber and I was a skier, so I was always very interested in the outdoors and the natural environment. And maps were a thing that I was always interested in. And even when we started working in parks, I was working with some of the biological, the inventory groups there as a park warden. And also when I worked in Winnipeg, we worked on mapping systems, and it was quite interesting to me. And this whole concept of environmental gradients and modeling landscapes using environmental gradients was something that interested me. And it really fit well in with the idea of what has become the centerpiece of the Fire Management Systems Group. So with that, I think a few years or 1 or 2 years after I left, started with the Northern Forestry Center, I had finally got an employee. I had Richard Smith, a technician, come and work with me, and we started working on a lot of data related things. And as Kerry mentioned, we were writing. He followed in shortly thereafter. We were programming very simple products. I don't want to redo that, but it was an interesting time, and I guess I'm not going to go over all the things that the guys have gone through, but when I left the job in 2003, my title was called Research Manager, Fire and Landscape Management Programs. And in many ways, another dream job. You couldn't ask for a better job than to be able to work on those kinds of projects and have all the tools and resources to do the things we wanted to do. And so I guess what I'd like to say is a lot of things that I'm proud of. And I guess first and foremost is the Fire Management Systems team. These guys were enjoyable to work with. They were obviously fun. And we all got along very well, except for that one dolty email that I sent to Peter. I'm not even sure I sent that. I think he's faked that one, but I'll believe him. I'll trust him. And but I don't think we ever had there was never a crossword spoken between us in the 20 years we worked together. And I think that's pretty amazing. I think that we got along so well. And if anybody could speak ill of me, it would be deserved, because I was kind of a crazy man in those days. I'd come up with ideas, and I just meet guys once a week, and we'd say, "Can we do this?" And invariably they'd say, "Yeah, we can do that," and just tackled these problems. And we did a lot of innovative things, but it wouldn't have been possible without the team, the Fire Management Systems team that's there today. So it was a lot of fun in that way. I also, when I look back, 25 years old, Canadian Wildland Fire Information System. I just can't believe that. I find that astonishing. How many information systems last for 25 years? Not many. In fact, when I retired, I wanted to retire early because of personal reasons, but I was worried that as soon as I left, this thing would collapse, and people could, that maybe there wouldn't be anybody strong enough to keep it going, or maybe it didn't have merit. And so it brings me great joy to see that it is still live and well and thriving and getting better than it was when I left. And it's really, really makes me feel tremendously proud of the organization and the crew and all the hard work that goes on. And you can see it, and I can see it in new products that are coming out. It's really a job well done by the team. I'm proud of some other things too. I'm really proud of our collaboration that we had with the Canadian Center for Remote Sensing. They really, without them, we wouldn't have had the Fire M3 work. The work that we did with European Space Agency and NASA and Canadian Space Agency. There was a lot of exciting things going on back then. It was a lot of fun. Gosh, I got thrown into stuff that I never even knew anything about. I mean, I'd taken some remote sensing, but you know, we were right there within the cutting edge of all that stuff. And to be able to integrate some of this work with Canadian Wildland Fire Information System was pretty exciting time. And I think it, you know, it's just, you know, it's being in the right place at the right time with the right people. And it's, you know, it's not, it's in some ways it's just luck, you know, but we were very lucky. And I think that's something I'll always feel really good about. We had some collaboration with, as I mentioned, the European Space Agency, NOAA, and of course, Max Planck Institute. And it became pretty obvious, so some of the papers we did there, that CWFIS was going to be a great tool for climate change research as well. Because initially it was when we started doing it, I thought, well, this is something that CIFC should or could use. And coincident to that, I'd been in, when CIFC is being set up, I represented Parks Canada at the meetings in Winnipeg because I was close by. And so I used to go to all those meetings. And so I always thought that CIFC would be a great organization somewhere down the line, and that this could be a place for CWFIS in the future. I don't want to say too much more. I feel very thankful for the awards that I got. The one that really, and it was always kind of fun to go to Ottawa and see your face across from Yvonne Hardy's office for getting the head of the Public Service Awards. I always thought that was a pretty cool thing. I know I'm bragging now, but that was always kind of a neat thing. But the reason I bring that up is that there was a lot of people that I owe a debt of gratitude to for my career with Canadian Forest Service, and certainly Dennis Dubé and Marty Alexander for dragging me down and seeing the light that I should work for CFS rather than working for Parks Canada. I mean, I wouldn't have made the move if I hadn't worked for or met Dennis Dubé at the Henry House Burns in Jasper and hadn't met Marty. So those two people really helped me form my career, I guess. Dave Keel was a great supporter he encouraged me to consider promotions even when I was truly reluctant to do so. And but he was a good supporter of me. Boyd Case as well. I was a very big supporter of Fire Management Systems Group, and certainly Steve Price was very helpful as well and very supportive. I want to thank some other people who never get thanked, I think, and that was the CFS headquarters staff. You know, I think there's when we're out in the regions, you tend to think, well, those guys in the headquarters, I mean, they don't know what's going on. But, you know, they do. They have that big view, that broader view of things. And whenever I was going down to work with Canada Centre for Remote Sensing or the National Atlas people, whoever I was going to see in Ottawa, I always made sure I made a day to go and tour around the CFS headquarters. And I'd walk around and I'd meet people like Gordon Miller, Albert Simard, Yvonne Hardy, and they would always make time for you. And you know, that they would support you. They knew what you were doing if you went and talked to them and asked for their advice and support. And it really worked well for us, I think. And thank goodness for that, I tell you. Also Joseph Selar at CCRS was a very good supporter of us, and a lot of other people. There's so many more names that I can't even remember, and that's again my age showing that. But I do want to tell one funny story, and I don't know if it's funny, but it's an interesting one. We were taking Yvonne Hardy on a tour of the Indonesia project, and we were over in Sumatra. and touring a place. I think it was a acacia nut. What's the fast-growing tree species there? I can't remember now. But it was a fire management program that they had going there for fire prevention. And Yvonne and I'm trying to think who else was on that trip. I think it was maybe Steve Price or whatever, and myself. And we were taking Yvonne around, and we were standing back towards the back of the group, looking at these fire management, fire suppression tools. And Yvonne just kind of looked over his shoulder, and all of a sudden, there were these paramilitary people with big, heavy automatic weapons coming out of the bush, and it didn't really look very good for us. And I was quite nervous as well, because there had been a lot of we call it kidnappings in this area. And so I snuck over beside our leader and our tour leader and said, "What are these people with these automatic weapons doing? Our ADM is quite worried, and so am I." And he says, "Oh, that's just the Indonesian army. They all look like that. They don't wear uniforms. They just they look like Rambo, you know." He said, "We just hired them to protect you so you wouldn't get kidnapped." And so we always laugh about that, because that was that was something that was a bit scary, but I think we got a big laugh over that at the end of that trip. With that, I really don't have much to say, except I really enjoyed working with these guys. I miss them. I mean, they were really good to me, and they were loyal, they were fun, and they were smart. They were really good workers. And you're, Bruce, you've got a good team there. And I know they speak very highly of you as well, so I'm quite happy to hear that they got a good home. And with that, I'm going to say that's my speech. Thank you.
Thank you, Bryan. That was great, and thanks for joining us. I would like to thank Kerry, Richard, and John as well. And we're out of time, and so I guess if you have another meeting at 3, then you can go. But if there are any questions or comments from anyone, now is your chance. And if there's any questions for Bryan, make them really hard ones.
Don't speak all at once.
Right.
I just wanted to say thank you to all you for putting such hard work into that, and the lovely presentation you have it, and it's an honor and a privilege.
Thanks, Bruce.
Great presentation. I enjoyed that immensely. All the pictures and everything. Fantastic.
Thanks, Don.
Come on, Kelvin, you can say something. Give us a zinger.
Yeah.
Now I know more what happened above my office on the 3rd floor.
Yeah, that's right. Okay, great. Well, thanks everyone for coming. And so there'll be more of these sessions, not about this group. And so needless to say, you're invited to them as well. And other than that, have a good afternoon. Thanks, everyone. Farewell.
Okay, bye-bye.
Ciao.
Thank you, Kerry. Thank you all.